What's the worst surprise you've ever had on a first date? She crashed in a parking lot. There were cops in the parking lot, so they approached the car. When they asked for her ID and the car's registration, she opened up the glove compartment and she had needles, spoons, lighters and some other drug paraphernalia. First and last date. Also, she believed in horoscopes. He jumped in the first 5 minutes of his plan for us, which was date for 6 months, move in together in 8, engaged by 12 months and wedding 6 months later. Kids were immediate after the wedding. When I asked him WTF, he explained he was 30 years old and had no time to lose. Blind date. He shows up at my work to get me. I go to get into his car and the passenger side has over ankle deep garbage on the floor. He truly thought it was no big deal for me to just perch on top this mound of shattery. He eventually ended up marrying the girl who set us up. He texted and asked if I had a condom before even meeting for the date. Although safe sex is very important, his presumptuous overconfidence was a huge turn off. No thanks, dude. We had been chatting via a dating site for a couple weeks, and while she wasn't exactly a looker in the pics, they weren't too bad. However, when she showed up, she bore a striking resemblance to Shrek. She had her infant with her, which we hadn't discussed ahead of time. She had broke her ankle and wasn't able to walk very far, which again I knew nothing about. So, I tried to amend our plans and she quickly shot down all of my suggestions. So finally I just said, "Alright, you can decide where we're going then." She responded, "Oh, I can see you and me are gonna have problems." I said, "No, it's not gonna be a problem because you can go ahead and just drop me right back off at my house." This all went down within 1 mile of my house. Good times. Had a guy talk about what kind of engagement ring he'd put on my finger on the first date. Another told me I'd better dress up for the date and ended up wearing cargo shorts and a crappy t-shirt. Almost through with dinner, she starts up with the most vile racist rant I have ever heard come out of a human mouth. Horrifying. End of the interaction for the remainder of dinner. Complete silence as I drove her home. She got out of the car without saying goodbye and I didn't say it either. Not me but a friend. She only sent half face pictures or posed with her hand covering parts of her face. Red flag for me. But my friend persisted. Came down to meeting her. We're sat in the park waiting. As we see her walking down the road. Turns out she looks nothing like the edited and posed pictures, and is on the large side to boot. My friend proceeds to hide behind a car near the park entrance as she's walking down towards him. She can obviously see him. Eventually he moves out from behind the car, tries acting like he dropped something, then turns to her and says, "Hi, how are you? Right, I've gotta go catch you in a bit," and proceeds to run off. Safe to say they never spoke again. And luckily she didn't click that I was his friend, so I wasn't left to clean up the damage. He still gets shit for it to this day, huh? Met this girl on Tinder. Hit it off. On the first date it turned out she was not the girl on the pictures. When asking, it turned out that the girl on the photos was her sister. Her idea was connect on a psychological level and that the guy would take her physical appearance for granted. I explained her that it doesn't work like that, and like this she turns out to be a liar. I did give the date a chance, but in real life she was also less witty and funny. So it was also our last date. The fact she wasn't exaggerating when she said she has selective mutism, or me, in an attempt to make conversation. So how do you know? Mutual friend her. Oh, he's my drug dealer. Or her. By the way, my best friend is coming to meet us in 20 minutes. Her friend was one of the rudest fucking people I've ever met. I sat there in silence while they talked about stuff I couldn't contribute to. Met a girl on a dating site. She showed up to the date with a bun in the oven, as one might say. Had to have been at least 8 months pregnant, and made no indication to me whatsoever. Only time on a date where I immediately left before the date actually started. Meet her London at a well-known tourist attraction over 20 years ago. Chatted to her for an hour, kinda hit it off. She suggested we go for a coffee and spent a couple of hours chatting, and she suggests meeting up in Covent Garden at 9 PM that night. When I arrived she was already there and I joined her at the table and we both ordered food and all was good. It was at this point I realized a lot of people were looking at us and I started to think I either had my trousers undone or bird shit on my shoulder. Something that was catching people's eye as everyone was looking at us. I didn't say anything and continued with the date. About 20 minutes later I notice a couple of big guys hanging around and taking way too much interest, so decide to ask her if she had noticed. It was at this point she explained to me that she was a very famous celebrity and that they were part of her personal protection team. We had a great date. She was really apologetic for not saying anything beforehand. In fact, she said it was the first time she had been on date for a long time. For just being herself and not for her fame. I decided, I will be honest, the week before I meet the women who I married, stayed with for 20 years, that I would no way be able to date her. Her life was full of paparazzi and the usual celebrity stuff. Roll on 14 years and my daughter buys one of her albums and I mentioned to her that I once took her on a date. My daughter I don't think believed me, so I contacted her via her agent and got phone call from her. Had a good chat and she invited me and my daughter to her gig in London. I still get emails from her once in a while. My date kept drying out my meat on the Korean BBQ. I told her I wanted to do it myself, but she wouldn't listen. It was so frustrating. I ended up marrying the bitch. This was my absolute first date. I was 19, he was 25 I think. He knew I wasn't 21 but still wanted me to go to a bar with him after the movie he took me to. So I use my fake it get in no problem. He gets blackout. He was supposed to drive me home, then leaves me at the train station where I had to walk home 2 miles. I guess the surprise was he was kind of a jerk. Blind date. She came to the door dressed in cheap jeans that were old as hell and old, semi-dirty white t-shirt blouse. I thought she was my date's mom originally. I was told she was fun, cool and my age, but instead she was old, 54, 12 years older, a stick in the mud and didn't have any hobbies except watching TV. He just flat out told me he couldn't feel emotions. I ended up dating a literal sociopath for 3 years. She had a penis. He kept going to the bathroom to snort coke and then said he normally freebases. So, crack. He smoked crack. I went on a date with his dude after 5 years of marriage. It started out okay to start with. I felt out of touch a little, but my date ordered the most expensive champagne, got wasted and started dancing in the restaurant. I called a taxi for him and of course he didn't pay for bill. What a mess. A Tinder date I had about a year ago. We chatted for a while but she suggested we go play Pokemon Go. I was like, sure, this'll be great. We meet at a park and she is with her brother, which wasn't bad but I just wasn't expecting it. That's not the twist though. See, I drove and she didn't, so I asked if they needed a ride. Oh, the brother brought his GF as well, so I had to drive 3 strangers home. Again, no big deal. So when I asked where they all lived they said at a local church. I was like, WTF, but okay I guess. Turns out she's homeless and so is her brother. I hoped right out of there. I wish that was the only time a homeless girl asked to hang out from Tinder and never mentioned being homeless until after we met up. Happened once before. Less than 24 hours after our first date he texted me wanting to meet up again. That day I was seeing my dying stepdad in hospice, which I told him. He then proceeded to get pissed and tried to guilt me into leaving the hospice to go on a second date with him. Needless to say, I never talked to him again. I honestly wasn't into him anyway. She told me she had a penis. Still not sure if she was serious. That she couldn't do really anything related to vehicles except spread em in the backseat. She had a license but couldn't drive to save or live. Also, she was too pampered know how to fill her mom's van with gas or scrape the windshield. She drove on our first date because I was on crutches. She then made me scrape the windshield while on said crutches and couldn't even help me up when I fell off them. Second surprise was that she woulda screwed my brains out if she wasn't on her period. I was so naive.